ready to get started. Really appreciate your patience. Oh, yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks to the tech guy. Maybe we should make this some kind of technological ritual every time we start. Okay. So, welcome to the second of the Postgraduate Art Talks for the autumn term. My name's Ros Gray, and I'm the Programme Director of the MA Art and Ecology. And before I introduce our speakers, I'm just going to give a very quick introduction. If anyone hasn't accessed the Postgraduate Art Talks BLE, you can use this QR code that we shared last week, so please log on and you can see the full information about the talk series. And just a reminder that this is the second one of 4, so after this the next one will be on the 17th of November with the Planetary Portals Collective, so don't miss that one as well. And a reminder of the format: we'll have a presentation of 30 to 40 minutes, then there'll be a bit of discussion between me and the speakers, and then we'll have Q&A. So as you're listening, be thinking about making notes on your questions and your thoughts and so on. It's really good to bring those to the discussion. And don't forget to stick around afterwards for the bar. So this is a way in which the MFA students raise money for their degree show. So it's a really nice moment when you can mingle with other people from different courses. Okay, so we started hearing last week about the theme for this term, which is planetarities in the plural. And Suhail made this amazing table. I'm not going to rehearse all of that explanation of this table that he gave, but just as a reminder that we're kind of edging into here, this final column, where we're thinking about the planet's multi-scalar, macro, meso, macro scales, and there are a whole set of questions about the role of art and of artists. So we heard about these sort of global conditions in which something called contemporary art is located, and one of the questions that they raised was, if contemporary art is associated with the historical moment of postmodern globalism, what comes after or in the wake of contemporary art? What are we moving into? And so we'll be picking up on this question and other questions that Gary raised about the role of artists in responding to polycrisis. And our speakers tonight both have long histories of working with Indigenous and peasant-led organisations. So I'm going to just talk a little bit, very briefly, about, just to sort of frame their talk in relation to some of the ways in which planetarity has functioned as a way to think about the present. And so last week, Suhail referenced Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak's writing. She was one of the first men to coin the term planetarity. And in her writing, it has a relation both to land and to the term pueblo, which means people in Spanish, but it also can refer to a village or to communities across much larger scales, transcending the borders of the nation-state or the logics of transnational corporations. So, in Death of a Discipline, the book where Spivak first set out her concept of planetarity and planet thought, she talks about how globalism renders the land as spectral. She says, I have written about the spectralization of the rural, the conversion of the rural into a database for pharmaceutical dumping, chemical fertilizers, patenting of indigenous knowledge, big dam building and the like, as the forgotten front of globalization for which the urban is the instrument. And so one of the things that we're going to be hearing about, in a way, is work that's responding to a long history of ruptures and damage to sustainable ways of life, in large part through processes of enclosures and colonialism, but also in the context of the mid and late 20th century post-colonialism, the Green Revolution. So I'm just wondering if that's a phrase that is familiar to all of you. If you haven't heard of Green Revolution, perhaps you could raise your hand. At least a few people haven't heard of it. Yeah, okay. So this was a period from the beginning of the early 20th century in Europe, when there was a series of technologically driven intensifications of agricultural production, very much associated with militarism. And after the Second World War, these methods that were developed at the time of a sort of state of emergency were normalised and, in a way, exported through European former colonial powers and then the United States, who pushed a developmentalist agenda. So that involved a whole process of sort of standardisation, but also appropriation, and the development of high-yield varieties of seeds that required heavy use of pesticides and fertilisers. So it's credited with reducing starvation, but also a whole series of negative effects. And a recent sort of synthesis of research on that by the IPCC found that intensive agriculture in the second half of the 20th century led to soil degradation and loss of natural resources and contributed to climate change. While the Green Revolution technologies substantially increased the yield of a few crops and allowed countries to reduce hunger, they also resulted in inappropriate and excessive use of agrochemicals, inefficient water use, loss of beneficial biodiversity, water and soil pollution, and significantly reduced crop and varietal diversity. So, one of the things that Gary talked about last week was the importance of world making, and so one of the things that I think Daniela and Åsa's collaboration does is engage with histories and existences that still produce a huge proportion of the world's food supplies, even though we're in this moment when there's lab-produced protein and all sorts of things. So, still a kind of modest assessment is that more than a third of global food is produced by small-scale farmers worldwide. And so we also talked last week about the way in which theory is situated and emerges from practice, and from particular places and communities. It's not detached from those places and communities. And their collaboration is in solidarity with the long history of histories of struggle by small-scale growers against exploitation by agribusiness. So I think another way in which their work maybe challenges some of the kind of focus in the discourse on planetarities on the human sort of sphere is the way in which they are looking at plural more than human histories. So a weaving of stories between people and potatoes through co-evolution and learning with different human and plant protagonists. So that's a challenge to some of the dogmas of industrial modernity. In this sense, as in many indigenous cosmologies, people or personhood or protagonist extends beyond the human. So I'm going to now, it's a great honour in fact, to introduce Daniela and Åsa, whose work I've followed and admired for a really long time. So Daniela Zambrano Almidón is a Quechua researcher and interdisciplinary artist with a career dedicated to artistic projects and research on Andean economic, technological and relational processes, as well as decolonization and memory. Their work spans various formats, including agricultural and relational art, performance, textiles, video, installation, and artistic mediation. Both Åsa and Daniela have rather long biographies, so I'm going to condense them a little bit. I hope that's okay, you guys. Daniela studied at the Berlin University of the Arts and the National School of Fine Arts in Peru, and they've led various projects, intercultural art projects that bring together indigenous community leaders, environmental activists and traditional artists. And she's also, they've also participated in art exhibitions, academic presentations, film festivals, biennales, and is also an art educator in Brandenburg in Germany. Also, Sonjasdotter, who's based in the Isle of Ven in Sweden, inquires into relationalities of crops, their nurturing generosity, the tensions around power, politics and narratives related to their cultivation, and also, not the least, how social organisation mobilise and form coalitions around their cultivation. So she's motivated by an urge to engage in material narrative processes for the unmaking of violent relationships through food and land. And she situates this work in relation to her own upbringing between monocultural farm fields in the highly industrialized farm region of South Scandinavia, as an embodied experience of of such relationships that happen to the people, the habitats, the waters, and the soil. So Åsa has elaborated this in the 2022 film Cultivating Abundance, and has worked together with Daniela on Papitas Tarpuycha, Earthing Potatoes project. She's also the editor of a translation and contextualization called Peace with Earth, which is by Elizabeth Tam and Elgin Wagner, and has published the book Peace with Earth, Tracing Agricultural Memory, Refiguring Practice. Like Daniela, she's also involved in a huge number of different farmer and peasant-led organizations, and completed her PhD, which was called Towards Peasant Cultivation of Abundance. I do recommend that you check out the VLE, whether you've got their full biographies to get a full scope of what they have done. But now I'd like to hand over to Daniela and Åsa for...
Okay. Hi everyone, thank you so much for the invitation. So we are Daniela Zambrano and Åsa Sonjasdotter. We are artists and research, and we worked before 4 years ago, and we have to start actually before we meet with different projects between agriculture practice and art. And with as topic for us, or the very important point for us, is what happened in the agricultural context. And we have also a connecting when this is the potato. And also we meet in Germany, so for 4 years ago, and we live here in Germany, and as of course, is very connected with praxis, so in relation, so with potatoes and resistance practice in the farms. And it was very interesting how we can meet and how we can share different experience and different perspective from farmers, families from different places. I come from Peru, from 2 different cultures, ancient cultures, and for me it was also very impressed how here in Germany is so important potatoes identity, but so many people have no actually is the potato here in Germany, or how is the process from the monoculture from potato, or the relationship from potatoes and then colonial histories. And yeah, so we have to beginning, so the first we meet and we make action food, and then we talk about from this topic, but also we motivated people, and also with so many other materials like a collage, like an installation, we produce and we talk about from them. This is the topic. And next say we can see next. Yeah, it's like and this is also the last word for us this is like installation, but also as a structure to meet for people and for potatoes plants, and it's very inspired from us research, also from Åsa, and she explained herself. But from her perspective was also very important how I can connect with my earth, also how I can reconnect it in my migration experience with the situation now with the farmers in Peru, and on how we can understand the farmers move, and because the context for this exhibition is the 500 years from the peasant war in Germany, and how it's connected also with the colonial praxis. And yeah, for us was okay, the important person in this time is the peasants, also then peasant from Germany, yeah, but the peasant identity is very connected and very transversal, so from north and south. And we bring also as perspective and research, and then we bring also too many bodies, so from people and plants, and we meet and we reflected these histories. And that was a very nice process from this year. But actually you can see more than 500 years. Actually the potato have 8,000 years from existence. And we need also to recognize how is coming these seeds. These seeds is not coming only from the natural exploited and then we become the seed. The seeds they come from people, from science. And that's also how we recognize this science for the indigenous people and from peasants. And the next, please. Yes, this is all a little bit more details. This is the part for my research also. And for me, it's also very interesting how we can talk about from the resistance of the farmers in Peru. And you can see also very old, not too maybe too old, but old archive from Peru. So how is this structure? This is very colonial and feudal structure is to coming in the colonial time, and then it's very present in the first time from the Republic from Peru. And the indigenous people was not only poor, was very very present from this structure. And the potatoes is we make this form from archive, also from testificate this what happened in this time. And yeah, and then later I can explain more for this different part of the collage. Next, please.
So maybe I can say something here?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, Ross, you asked us for this presentation to talk, say something about why we call our work action. And we haven't really talked so much about it before, so it was nice to get this question. And we also learned that, if you take the next slide, that this is a question that you have already dealt with, because in this printed series on varieties that is initiated by Jennifer Grabgris, Sheila Sheikh and Euros Gray, the notions of not only action but also of rehearsal are activated. So in François Verger's, for us, really important 224 book, Making the World Clean, Wasted Lives, Wasted Environment, and Racial Capitalism. Maybe you have already talked about it in this lecture series, but it really relates a lot to these themes that you bring up in this series. And in the foreword by Ruth Wilson Gilmore, she states that Vergès in this book teaches us to see in order to act, and through acting to become more provisionally aware of what we might not have noticed before. And this is for us the action, on the one hand, that we collaborate together around it, so we learn from each other, but also through the different activities we engage in, we can together become aware of what we have not noticed before. So the potato, for example, is the very common ingredients in our food often, but we have maybe not thought of some of the implications of it. So this was a helpful reference for us. And also, if you take the next slide, as we work with peasant knowledges and we grow potatoes as part of this action, we recognize the way the term rehearsal relates to practices of plant cultivation. Because the English term rehearsal, etymologically, it stems from re as in remake, return, and hers, which is the French term of hexier, which means raking or harrowing, which is what you do when you prepare the soil for sowing and planting. And so the way the use of this term has been widened to include practices of acting, so you rehearse before an act, or maybe also, at least sometimes, an action. It suggests that plant cultivation isn't only a means of obtaining food, but it can also be about rehearsing social relations and stories, including, as the act of sowing and planting also suggests, potential relations and stories to be tended, harvested, shared, and also nurture us. So, with our actions, we also refer to the political and poetic multi-layered meaning of the term, where it, besides direct action in the world, also can refer to various notions such as legislative decrees, legal acts, which is very important when you work on questions regarding rights to seeds and food sovereignty, but also to drama, so an act or a piece. So for us, the terms rehearsal and action are related terms, and they thrive in companionship, in collaboration, and by taking part and place in the world. So in this piece, the potatoes testimonies on the defense of the earth, which we will focus on in this presentation, we cultivate plants and images as action, as a way to let peasants' abundant world-making grow, take place, be yielded and shared. So, for the next piece, please. Yeah. And so, the banners consist of collages, and we have made them from existing photographs, either in historical official archives, maybe, but also from our personal archives, from our personal experiences in our families or in the communities that we live in and come from. And at the base of this circular installation, we grow potato varieties that were cultivated in Europe, like what you talked about, Daniela, since the times of the colonization of Abya Yala, which is the indigenous term for South America. And the vision for the shape of this structure came to you, Daniela, and maybe we can take next slide. Maybe you want to say something about this drawing, Daniela.
Yes, of course. Yes, so we have the invitation, also I have the invitation from Åsa to make this project together. And for us, also indeed the other different experience was how we can use the space as space for relationships and to talk about for the potatoes history and also for the air history. In this time, I have to planify my travel to Peru, and for me it's also so very important. So how I can speak from a place, because also as migrant persons, so we live in different places. I live in Berlin, and then I am so very connected with my community, from the Peruvian community, and also the Latin American community, and also different political collective, but so we need also the connection with an air. So also for me it was very important to return to Cusco, where I have so many years I have to work, and part of my family is coming to live from Cusco, and then I have the idea more, so maybe to bring this geographical area, like this form from circle, also for recover from pot. So like this recipe where we found the potato, also the potato come from the Titicaca Sea, and then is also in the round. So, and this form for me was important to understand this. Also, this is too many things that make this. This not come alone. This come from very connected ecosystem. And we have the mountains. The mountains is also very important for the potatoes, and cold and mountains is so very similar to North Scandinavian in the Andes, and for me was okay how we can bring also this concept. So from this geographical concept in installation, and then is coming this drought. And so the first idea was bring the air, so like mountains in the installation, but then is maybe small come to shame, because also in the art practice, also in the art context for museums, you have the spectative, but then you need to shame, because in especially in Germany, you have too much restrictions from this room or from this heritage and construction and wherever. And then next sale, please. And then we can fund a new version from this concept. And then also is very involvement for this construction. And it's coming also how we can translate also this different place and image from this very connected universe in this construction. You can explain it, Åsa?
Yeah, because what was so nice when you sent this drawing was that we had the chance to work with a technician. And what we were not aware of is that the very poetic drawing that you made, Daniela, is actually technically possible to make, because the installation doesn't need to be anchored with some extra poles like how you would put up a circus tent or something like that, because when the metal pipes are hard, it actually holds itself. So what we like with this format, and this is something that we have been looking for actually throughout the years, is to think of how we can find a structure that can connect all these different aspects that you have also been talking about, Daniela, because it's very flexible and mobile. You can basically lift it and move it around, and you can put it together very easily and put it up and down. And it's primarily an outdoor structure. Maybe you can take the next picture, please. And it can be placed in a town square, in a park, but also what we love, you can put it in a farm field, a meadow, in a garden. And this circle can there activate stories, relations in different ways. So here you can see when we are installing it, you can see the basic structure. It's a multi-purpose pavilion. The banners can be replaced, so we could, we can invite other artists, or if you have a suggestion, any of you, please contact us. One can think of this as a place to meet for screenings, or to have gatherings together and do different things. And if you take the next slide, so here for this situation, we built a table in the center. And we also, because we cannot grow directly in the soil in this museum where it was presented, but we liked in this situation that actually we have grown the potatoes now in plastic sacks. And what you might notice in the small pictures in a previous slide, the plastic bags refer, like what you also talked about, Daniela, to, on the one hand, how potatoes in the Andes are transported around and taken to the market in very beautiful, elaborate sacks, more beautiful than the ones we have here. So they are also referring to this question of migration, but they are also practical because it's easy to grow in them, and life is not always perfect. So it's not the perfect organic cultivation situation, but that's how life often is in migration and in transition. So that's it. And here we found it very nice that you can sit and be very intimate with the plants, and you can be together with humans and more than humans in this way. But we hope, of course, that at some point we can present this and in a way where we can cultivate directly in the ground. And actually, I'm now in Brazil, and I hope that my friends around me, which are chicken, are not too disturbing all the time. But I'm on my way now to La Paz in Bolivia, because we are going to actually take this very same concept of structure and work with the Aymara poet Rubén Hilario in La Paz, with the Museum de Etnográfica et Folklore, and in this sense, this concept of this pavilion is already traveling, and there we will also rework the banners in collaboration with Rubén Hilario, the poet, and his community there. So this process is actually already happening. So in this installation, it began as a commission for a piece that could commemorate the 500-year memory of something called the German Peasant War, which happened in 1525. And so this triggered us to think of what has happened since then. And we will talk more about that later. And so, if we can take the next slide. So the potatoes that are grown at the base of this circle, they have been planted, so they have been, on the one hand, from a collection that I have of old potato varieties, and also from other farmers in Europe. And as you can see, we also grow some sweet potatoes. And potatoes are a unique plant in the sense of that you regrow the tubers every year. So every year the tubers are new, but the tubers are a part of the plant. It's not a root and it's not a seed. So it's a part of the plant where it stores a bit its energy and sprouts for the next year. So basically, when you harvest the potato 1 year and plant it the next year, it's the same plant that you little bit help to continue grow continuously in an area where it's not maybe by itself habituated. So these potatoes here are on the one hand very new, but as you can see they have a bit more colorful and sculptural shapes than the ones you can find in the supermarket. And it is because these potatoes are the very same plants, the very same tubers that have been regrown by human hands in Europe that have tended them since they came here some 400 or 500 years ago. And if we take the next slide, please. So these potatoes, they came as food for people on the ships that had been sailing from Spain or other countries of the Holy Roman Empire and the Catholic Church's colonial war on Abya Yala, and they were and they were arriving at the border of the Inca Kingdom in 1528. So this was 3 years after the peasants in Germany rose up in resistance in what is called the German Peasant War. So there is also a very real connection through these tubers that peasants in Germany were rising up against the oppressive authorities of the emperor and the Catholic Church, and these were the same oppressors that peasants in the Andes, from the Inca Empire and all the regions that the Inca Empire were ruling. That's a complex story. So the peasants have been oppressed by the very same authorities. And so in our banners we talk of the stories from this very specific event. And the potatoes that we grow have been grown by peasants, campesinos in the Andes from this time and before this time, and they came to Europe as food on the ships returning from this colonial war. And peasants and farmers in Europe very quickly understood the specific unique capacity of these specific plants. And later I will tell a little bit more about the specificity of these kinds of potatoes, because they are Andean potatoes. That's also why they have these colors and shapes. But if we continue now with the next slide. Yeah. So now I continue. So sorry, just to say that, so in the series of banners, on the top you can see, so we have made 6 banners each. On the top, it's your banner, Daniela, and in the bottom, it says mine. We rework pieces of past and present photography through the method of collage. And this is, on the one hand, a basic technique, but we find it so freeing because you can literally rework imagery that is like stuck, let's say, in a colonial approach to what you have in front of you. And we can take them out of that situation and connect them differently and making place for other existing, often overlooked, and also potential relations, stories, and bring them out in the world. So if you take the next slide. And here, again referring to these questions of rehearsal and action, it's really encouraging to think with the author, curator, filmmaker, and theorist of photography, Arequipa and Puno, in the way she discusses photography by relating to action and rehearsal in the 2019 book, Potential History, Unlearning Imperialism. And there she actually brings up exactly these questions. She writes, imagine that the origins of photography are not to be found somewhere around the beginning of the 19th century. Imagine instead that those origins go back to 1492. What could this mean? And she continues, to answer this question, we have to unlearn the expert knowledge that calls upon us to account for photography as having its own origins, histories, practices, or futures, and to explore it as part of the imperial world in which it emerged. So we have to unlearn its seemingly obvious ties to previous and future modes of producing images, and to problematize these ties that reduce photography to its products its products to their visuality, and its scholars to specialists of images oblivious to the constitutive role of imperialism's major mechanism, the shutter. So, unlearning imperialism refuses the stories that the shutter tells. Such unlearning can be pursued only if the shutter's neutrality is acknowledged as an exercise of violence. So in this way, unlearning imperialism becomes a commitment to reversing the shutter's work. And this can hardly be imagined without rehearsals, since our daily habits are so entangled in the operation of imperial technologies. Such rehearsals in non-imperial political thinking and archival practice are not undertaken in preparation for an imminent day of reckoning, but rather as a mode of being with others differently. So this long quote, but nevertheless really relevant and helpful for this way of working that we are developing this piece, and also how we can work with photography and explains to us very well. So we are very grateful for this, this understanding. So the next slide, please. So for example here, Daniela, maybe you want to continue?
Yes. Also, for us was very important, so how we can make in the construction this narrative. When you, so now it's a very different room and different form to presentation, and for us was so more to understand this. I think so. What the important thing is also to understand what is the importance of maybe. How is that connection also with the room, with the space, and how we can use the space also more to understand and connect it as bodies. And for us, it was also important to understand how we can play with this outside on inside. And the narrative, we have 6 banners, so 6 from Åsa and 6 from me, and this banner connected in the middle with how is now the situation for the farmers also in Germany, so Europe, and in Abya Yala, very specifically in Peru. But when you go, and then when you go in this narrative, and then meet also in the beginning from the colonization, actually is the history, what happened with the potatoes and with the potatoes people in Abya Yala, as of this beginning from the resistance to modernity, but modernity is not only connected, modernity is colonial structure, and how this modernity is to beginning to pressure to the natural people and also kill this system from hospitality, from solidarity. And the potato history is not only the history from the root, it's the history from the people and how the people make this resistance to the modernity and the colonial system. And then you can see in these different banners this history in Peru, also in Europe, so very specific in Germany. And next slide. Okay, next image, please. Okay, now, as for me, this is the first time that I make this presentation for my research in Peru. So the part from this research you can find in the collage, but it's not all the part of the research in the collage, and it's also, I think that the work is, you have too many layers. It's not only the collage, the picture, it's not only the installation, it's not only the potatoes plants, it's also when we meet. So we can see also people, and in the end fund as installation, we have action food, and then we have to share this history, and then we share this food, and also for us it's very important. The artwork need to continue, so we live in. So it's a living work. It's not only object, and that's it. So for me, it's very important. So not only stay in the object, we not stay. we are in continued move, because the planet is in constant move. When we stay, and this is very dangerous, when then we are in this part from that, comfortable. We need problems, we need to move, we need revolutions, we need also to understand, hey, the history is not to stop. And then for me it was very important this year make this research in different places from Peru, because we can more understand when you have so many contexts, when you stay only in your context, and then you have the option more to understand your context, but you have so many other contexts, and you see that contrast, and then you have some more opportunities also to open your mind, open your perspective. And for me, as it was all very important, because I am also not in continue in Peru, so I have also other identities. Yeah, I am Daniela, but I have too much identities in my body, but it's no problem, it's nice. And when I returned to Peru, and then I returned also to see my friends, and this is also the part from this living work, and then you can see these flowers, and the flowers is from the farm from my friends in Cusco, and this is potato flower. I don't know how many people here I have to see the purple or lilas flowers or pink flower from potatoes. But this is so, for me, was normal in Peru. But when I come here for first time in Europe, and then I see so small plants from potatoes and white, and then I have the big question: what I can find only this potato flower. And then when I have to meet Åsa, and then I have more understand, oh my God. And this is so, for me, was so crazy to find only white potatoes in the supermarket also, because this is, for me, was not natural, because the universe is very different and very diverse. Next picture, please. And then here is my friends. And then here we can also find the white potato, but it's also very important to recognize how we need this diversity from plants, because it's the part from this move on the rest system when we stay also in the same seed, and then the seed is sick. And then you need also not only potatoes. Now we have the stand from permaculture. It's also very white term, sorry. It's like it's a mold. This is like a tendency from agriculture, but no, it's very old form from agriculture. Yeah, and we need to recognize them and more to understand, because when you have no adversity in your farm, and you then need this this chemical pesticides and chemical things, and this is not good for us body, this is not good for the animals, this is not good for the seed, and this is not good for the air. And this is why, because we we talk about from the earth, and I meet my friends, and then he asked me, hey, how is the agriculture in Europe? And then it was, oh, wow, this is a very strong history. When I talk about from this farms war in Germany, and then my friend was so, oh my God, this is so scary, yeah, because we say normal, so this Incan kingdom, but actually we understand, or we have other research, and we are so very different form from government. But wherever in this context, the important thing for this economic government was not gold. This was food. It's a food system. How the food is the central thing for the people, because we need food for the body. Other very important things was the textile, because the textile you need time, and time is very precious, more to gold. And this is how, now, so for example, we see, Peru have so many amazing restaurants, we have amazing quinoa, we have amazing potato, or wherever, but it's not new. This comes from very long time, because the food was a very central and important thing in this area. So it's not only cultural, but super indigenous system. And we can see the next picture. And this is Chinchero. This is so near Cusco. And when you can see, also when I talk about modernity, yeah, and this is the how the modernity, the structure, yeah, the nature. You can see in this place on the maps, this is a bigger construction, and this is an airport. This is a very crazy project for airport, when before was a very nice, a beautiful potatoes plantation, but not monoculture. There was some family plantations, so for different family, and then with so many different forms of potato, where we have to see these beautiful flowers. Before, what these beautiful flowers, and now you can see no beautiful concrete construction. And the cat and the straws, this amazing, so not only nature, this science, family, community, and life. And when you see here the contrast, but because the airport is not alone, it's coming also with this tourist system, and then you can see in the other photo, this part from potatoes, so area, and then in the round is this construction, modern construction, that before has other materials, but now also the modernity, this colonial thing, you need concrete, because this is also is better, like in this other old form to construction. And what you now see is in form from this apparent, this form from farming, also this connection, this science, and etc. Next picture, please. Now we are no more in Cusco, and now we are in the central area from Peru, that is in Huanuco. And we can see also this black and this hair. I was in these two parts from this place. It's like 3 hours from the city, from the small city from Huanuco. When you have auto, you can go, but it's not easy for the people. So you cannot find the transport public. It's actually you can. It's in this moment that the modernity is not totally coming, but in one way it's very difficult for them people, for the kids to go to the schools or wherever. But in the other way, the modernity is not in this area and cannot this nature. So this is an ambivalent context, but you can find the structure in our so now is working the natural like a normal form. So next picture please. Yes, and you can find now this beautiful landscape, but so was in Chinchero, but now you find this very problematic construction for airport. So next slide please. Yeah, and then I was with my father, and we have the opportunity to have auto, and then we have to meet very nice people in this area state, Raimundo. Raimundo worked with some, he collected and protected with a family and some very different form from seed, potato seed. And then you can see these biggers, biggers tubercles, and this is a potatoes. And this one has a no chemical things. Next slide, please. Next picture. Yes, and then he is Raimundo in the front, and then the other, this is the friend, and is in the part on the moment from harvest, and collected or make this potato planting for a project. This is also was no easy. It's a no easy work, but also he has a friends. But normally, you have your family is also involved in your work. But now, in the migration situation, the younger people need to go to the city because we need to go to university or we need to go to school. And this is also other problem, in the farm area. It's not only in Peru, this is also in different contexts. The young people go to the cities and then we are no more in the farm. And how, the question is how we can recuperate or we can continue this work with us as mother and with us fathers, or with us grandmother and with us grandfathers. And it's also, for me, was like a very very important also to understand how supervise this practice. And when you can see these beautiful flowers, potatoes farm, from the, and this is actually a God for me, because you find more than 8,000 years from science, from love, from resistance, but so many hands is in this food. Next, please. And Raimundo is also an activist, agriculture and activist, and he worked together with an organization from agricultures, indigenous agriculture people in Huanuco, and meet. Also, he is also very in the mountains in the work, and then in the next 2 days is in the city, and then we meet in the city, and then I was a part from the public, and then I was so very proud. Oh my God, here is now Raimundo, and then he involvement the people from the other farms for a new project, and how we can stay in this resistance from the in the front from this big industry. Peru, before 6 or 8 years ago, we imported so many potatoes from Europe. So this is crazy because we have a lot of potatoes. We have only in Peru 3,000 forms of potatoes on different colors, different flowers and forms and whatever. But Peru imported the palm fruits, also these fries for McDonald's, for hamburgers, and so these fries for fast food. So a lot. We imported these fries, this potatoes industry from Europe, and we make a disaster in the economic system for the farmers, for the small farmers. We have not too much this monoculture industry from potatoes. We have other form for monoculture industry. Avocado, this is a big problem. Blueberries, this is a big problem. And mangoes, for example, and other things. But this is
Daniela?
We export them.
Daniela, we need to wind up because we got delayed with the beginning.
Okay.
So,
And then we can continue. Next picture. Yes, and this is also the documentation. So from this moment in Huanuco, I meet also other people, other organizations from Femcarina, for example. Apart from the collage, you can find these potatoes here, and then we talk about.
I think what we got a glimpse of there was a really fascinating set of projects and concerns, and thank you so much for sharing your research and raising so many really important questions. And I can only apologise again for the technical problems that kept interrupting the talk. But we do have time now to take a few questions, and perhaps I can start with one or two just to get us going, if that's okay. So perhaps if we can just close the one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the method of this method of montage that you're using in this extraordinary structure, which is both a sort of display but also a space for convening discussion and groups. And I wanted to ask you about the use of montage in relation to the different archives of images that you're working with. So I think one of the things that maybe it isn't so well known, I mean, the colonial history of photography and its use to subjugate people is not so well known, but perhaps you could say something about its role in the standardization of food crops as well. And so how do you understand that connection? And what does it mean to take those colonial images out of their context and in a way decontextualize them but put them into another context? So perhaps also, do you want to speak to that, or perhaps both of you?
Yes, I have a very concrete example for that, and that is that photography was actually used as a tool to create the image of uniformity and standardization before uniform crops were actually bred as plants. Because cultivation and plant breeding takes time. So it takes about 10, almost 20 years to develop from peasant varieties like the ones you have seen that in the series we have presented now, that are very diverse and genetically also diverse, and the technology to breed plants into the uniformity that you see basically everywhere people grow commercially grown crops now, uniform plants. Before, if you can rewind and imagine, before these uniform plantations existed, all crops were diverse. And the photography was used literally to produced the image of uniformity, 100 years ago, so actually at the very beginning of the invention of photography, it was used like that. And the very simple way it was used was to bring in peasant crops as props in the photographic studio, and you literally whiten out the environment, and you put them in an order. And your eye looks at this image and sees something that is uniform, even if the plants as such were not uniform yet. And these images that today are quite well known, this is how we perceive very often crops. They were actually produced as vehicles to make us imagine uniformity before it de facto existed. So it's very real. And so for us, it's a pleasure to cut out these peasant crops out of their pictures and bring them into a different image environment and relations. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And perhaps one more question before I hand over to everyone else here. I was really interested by what you were saying about Daniela, and also about modernity as a colonial structure that's destroyed hospitality and solidarity. And I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit more about this idea of solidarity and conviviality as research. So we're very familiar with, I think since relational aesthetics, with modernist art spaces being transformed into spaces of conviviality, which are supposed to be a sort of balm for the alienating effects of modernity. But the idea of solidarity and conviviality, practices of solidarity and conviviality as research, I wondered if you could say a little bit more about what that means for you, and perhaps also how the structures that you built, how people engaging with them have responded. Like, are there connections now between, say, farmer activists in Germany and some of the communities that you've been working with in Peru? Like, what might that look like in real terms?
A little bit. So I think it's so very important, so the networks, so from collective, also for example, Åsa is part from the Via Campesina, and also Via Campesina is very connected, so in different lands, not only in Germany or in Scandinavian, it's also in Peru, and it's connected, for example, with the Femme. And then when I was in Huanuco, so part from my family staying in Huanuco, although we have too many contacts from family, from also friends, and also in this way, also from art, but we can also connect it and open the possibility to work together. And also for us, when we talk about also for this responsibility, because now we talk from potatoes, but the potatoes is not only from Daniela, from Åsa. The potatoes is also from the peasant. How is the responsibility also as research? Because we have what here, so it's not maybe extraction, but we work with them, and that we need to bring, so to return them. But then we need also to recognize how many praxis is in this way for extractation. So, and when we talk about from them, we don't need to repeat this practice. And this is so how we understand, okay, we stay not only as artists or as academic, we stay also as activists. This is also why we work also with action activists, with act, we stay so in move. And now when we go to Bolivia, so we are in the way from Bolivia also, so stays in the round from Bolivia now. And now we are also in this time to return and move or make some other possibilities from to meet, and information is also important. So because I have to understand Peru, the farmers have a big question also on this. Is the question is this European or this West agriculture is good or no good? And then when I connected this perspective from the European peasants and then say, oh wait, it's not monoculture, it's not good, and then I have that. So I have this information for the Peruvian peasants, and then this is good, and then we can so connected and we are so more strong because we have no own monoculture is not a fiction. This is a capital, and capital is power. And now, for example, in Peru we have a dictatorship, and the dictatorship is support with this big capital. And this is for us is so also is a political thing. So what we make. I think is, yes, they not only the solidarity we have so a budget and then we give a part of the budget. I think it's only this is our way, but the important way, how is this political engagement is very concrete. Yeah, this is so important so to talk about from them. And yeah, we not stay in this quiet status.
Thanks so much. Okay, I'd like to open up to questions. Anybody? Yeah, there's one up at the top there. So we've got a mic. Also, and Daniela, if you can't hear the question, hopefully you'll be able to hear the question, but if you can't, I can repeat it for you. Okay, also Salam, there wasn't a question there. No, there is. Okay, great.
Hi, just have a quick question. It was just so interesting to hear that how the farming practices in Peru, for instance, kind of creating the space for collaborating with the community, and they kind of extend to kind of the form of activism at the same time. And then as a part of the Chicago, the Black Panther Rainbow Coalition, we also have this free food giveaway things that kind of we doing. So pretty much that we kind of grow some plants, and then we kind of doing harvesting them, and then it's kind of giving out to the community, whoever in needs and stuff. So I'm just kind of curious, how does that practice of the activism that relates to the farming practices kind of looks out there in Peru? Because I haven't really heard in detail about what type of activity that you guys are doing, but just pretty much you guys are saying just that there's a relationship with the demonstrations of activism and at the same time with the farming. Just curious about that.
Okay, thank you. Did you hear that, or would you like me to sort of summarize the question?
Is it for Daniela, mainly?
I think it's a question about
how's the activism in context farms.
So I'm just curious about the those practices, and especially what practices you guys are doing as a the form of activism,
So the question is about different modalities of activism. So the example in Chicago of food growers distributing food, for example, as an example of one modality. So what are the forms of activism that you're engaged with? If you could give some examples, I think that's what the question is.
I can maybe answer a little bit to this, because I'm, as you mentioned, Daniela, I'm on the one hand I'm active. So now I'm based in Sweden, and I'm active in the local Via Campesina organization. And for those of you who don't know, Via Campesina is a translocal planetary web organized peasants, and it's very well organized bottom-up structure. So it's really, so when we work locally in Sweden, we are all the time connected globally through various meetings, conferences, and so on. And we work together to develop political responses to, for example, trade agreements and so on. So it's very real political work, both on the planetary scale, to relate to the theme of these lectures, but also always in the local. And so the solidarity is very real because we share very often similar problems, for example, with the peasants in Huanuco, where you work and where your community is, Daniela. And so the solidarity is very real. It's not, and so this is one way we work, and I'm part of Via Campesina because I am also practicing agriculture. I have, since some years ago, returned to the farmstead where I grew up in the rural area in Scandinavia, and from there I also work with recultivation of peasant crops in organizations where farmers organize around the custody of peasant crops. And I think this is a very important aspect of non-corporate seeds and all plants, non-corporate plants, is that you need to organize in order to take care of them and maintain them. And the organization, the plants kind of structure you socially. And this is very powerful, very important. This is one way. And I think something you mentioned in the question, that you work with gardening and so on, that you have the experience yourself, that to meet around the cultivation is really important and empowering.
Maybe, so we have to begin, so to explain this, we have to meet also with Åsa in the Zapatistas meet. So the Zapatista Gira was in Europe, and then have made so different action also in I make this meeting with different collective in different places from Europe, but in Germany, as in Berlin, we have this action for, so actually also other collective, for example, here in Germany, I am very active with the Peruvian community. Now it's so very difficult, the political situation in Peru, and we make so food action. Also we make some food, and then we say for very specific things. So and then we share this money, but also we informate what happened. Also we found different ways also to support this move in Peru when we are not in Peru, that we are here, and then we have also this possibility. We can also go in the street, and then we make some protests, and then and so in that one way is possibility, and this make to this is different. And for example, the repression for the farmers in Peru is very, very violent, and we have 60 dead people, and these people come from the farm context, and this was 2 years ago. And we stay not only in the Peru province, we stay open, and now we have also very hard situation in Peru, but also in Ecuador. And then now we look also that maybe we can make so other activities or other events, and like we can also support this move, support the farmers. And the next week I have other from Cajamarca. This is other work that I make with a lot of potatoes, and then in this part is also like this is a art event, like I have art, and that I can give my art for the event. And that is the part for the support, so it's very specific, and so and we say this food, and then we have here the concept from Kufa, but we say this food, and then we support and then sense in support very specific form from projects or support people and wherever. Yeah, this is also when we move. Also, we have not used the solution from these problems, but we stay in touch. And also very important is this networking. Yeah, that's what we have understand. And now in this second part of us work in Bolivia is coming so many nice things, but yeah, we also we stay with some other possibilities for solidarity and yeah.
Great, thanks so much. We've got to draw it to a close now because we've run out of time, but I just want to thank you both again for bearing with us and continuing to give the talk.